Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here to the Indian Nation Station pregame show, live from Alexander Stadium here at Perk Field. I'm A.J. Ganger, your hostess with the mostest. With me tonight, Bob Luby and Dwayne Bachman. Welcome them back to the Piqua broadcast team. Guys, thank you very much for being back to call Piqua football.
Well, AJ, I don't know. I can't speak for Bob, but I think I can. We're glad to be back. We've been excited. I've been ready to come to the stadium since 2 o'clock this afternoon, and so I think that pretty much tells you how excited I am about Piqua football and being part of this telecast.
What about you, Bob?
Concur with that completely. I've been excited. I can't wait for the first home game. Here we are. I love football, and I'm glad to be part of it.
And Piqua is playing Trotwood tonight here live at Alexander Stadium at Perk Field. One thing we want to talk about is the new public access TV station, no longer known as WOTVC. We are now the Indian Nation Station, and guess what, guys? We are residing from Piqua City Schools. How do you guys feel about the new public access TV station being at Piqua City Schools?
Well, I'll be real honest with AJ. I didn't know what to expect until I went to visit you the first time. It's the old wood shop in the industrial arts area. They have done a beautiful job of converting that into something that you and Damien and the students here at Piqua High School can use. Beautifully done. I understand equipment-wise you're in great shape, need a few little things, but generally speaking, I'm impressed, and I hope over the course of time some of the people in town get a chance to visit with you because they would be as impressed as I was.
Well, as a member of the Board of Education, obviously I was very pleased to see the move from Edison to Piqua High School, and of course it continues to enhance our curriculum and give students an opportunity to be involved in this level of technology and television work, and you got some outstanding people out here working, and I'm very happy about it.
It's a new and exciting thing that we have here at Piqua City Schools. I'm happy to be a part of it as the television station director for the Indian Nation Station with Damian Skeens helped me out. In his kids and his media class, they make some awesome things. You guys should have seen the Piqua Digital Weeklies that they put out this week. They had some really, really cool stuff in there with the intros and everything like that. So it's a great honor to be here with the Piqua Indians and to be able to broadcast all of Piqua sports and everything Piqua. Well, guys, we are in week number 2 of the high school football season. We again are here live from Alexander Stadium at Perk Field. The remaining schedule for Piqua looks like this. Trotwood Madison here tonight. On the 8th of September, they play Franklin, and we will also be bringing you that game on the Indian Nation Station. All 5 home games will be here live on the Indian Nation Station. On September the 15th, we're at West Carrollton. On the 22nd, we play Xenia live again here on the Indian Nation Station. On the 29th, it's not only homecoming, but it's a rivalry game between the Sydney Yellow Jackets, again on the Indian Nation Station. October the 6th, we're at Greenville, followed by October the 12th, we play Vandalia Butler, which is senior night, and also Bill Nee's night. And then we close the year out on the 20th at Tip City, followed by the dreaded 133rd rivalry matchup between the Troy Trojans and the Piqua Indians at Troy Memorial Stadium. Guys, what are your thoughts on the remaining schedule for the Piqua Indians?
Well, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about Franklin because they won big. They won 47-14 on the opening night. I tend to think they may be one of the tougher opponents we're going to have on our schedule. I think Sydney's going to be very, very good. I happened to talk to a St. Mary's fan, and he was saying that he went to that ball game. He said that in spite of the fact that we had a lot of games that weren't very close, that was the exception. He was very, very impressed with Sydney. Then I think Trotwood Madison, and there are a couple others I think we have to be careful of, and Bob probably has some thoughts on those.
Well, of course, Troy, the last ball game of the year, the Trojans and Piqua, and whenever they match up, it's always a game, throw out the records. Tip City, I don't think, is a bad football team this year. I think anybody in our division is going to be competitive. Greenville may struggle somewhat, but I think the rest of the teams in our division are going to be very, very competitive for us.
I have to agree with you guys 100%. Just like Bob said, too, when Troy and Piqua play, it's like a Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. You throw the records out the window, and it could be a close or a high-scoring kind of a contest. But when Troy and Piqua meet for the 133rd time on October the 27th. Some scores from around the G-Walk in Week 1 against Sydney beat St. Mary's 39-32. Tip City, a winner over Bellbrook 21-14. Massillon Perry stomped all over the Butler Aviators 49-14. Eaton beat Greenville 24-19. Trotwood shut out Troy 48-0. Beaver Creek beat Xenia 35-6. That was a Thursday night game. Centerville beat Fairfield 30-23. Wayne got shut out by Pine Richland, Pennsylvania 41-0. That was a Sunday game broadcasted on ESPN. Fairmont edged out Alter 13-12. And guys, I heard that Fairmont Alter game was one to be mesmerized by. It was such a good football game.
Went right down to the end. Alter had a chance to win it with a field goal, but the kick was probably 2 feet to the right, just outside the post, and Alter lost to their rival, Fairmont.
And again, AJ, there's a little personal thing there for Bob and I with the Fairmont Alter. The Fairmont coach is Dave Miller. He was at Covington for many, many years.
Yes, he was.
And he moved up to Fairmont, and last year was a little bit of a long year for the first-year coach. Glad to see him get off to a good start this year against their rivals.
You know, another thing to add on to that, Dwayne, Dave Miller's father was the head football coach at Piqua back in the 80s.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
So I worked at the high school when Dave was here. He was a good coach. He came up here from Centerville, really did a nice job with our program, and he left and went to Beaver Creek, I think it was.
I believe he did.
And he's retired now, of course. And coaching stays in the family, all of them on a high level.
A few more scores here to go over. Fairborn 32, Tecumseh 26, Carroll 27, Stebbins 12, and Little Miami shut out West Carrollton 42-0, followed by a Springfield win against Lancaster 55-21. Winton Woods beat Northmont 45-36 in a shootout. Kings edged Lebanon 37-31. Springboro fell to Mason 31-21. Miamisburg beat Northwest 54-24, and Piqua beat Meadowdale 50-12. Piqua coming into this game, much like Trotwood, at 1-0 on the year. Guys, a 50-0 lead at the half in that first game between Piqua and Meadowdale. What did you guys see during the first game of the season?
Well, just an overmatched Meadowdale team. I think they only dressed about 25 people, had 25 people on the roster, and it was not competitive. You kind of feel bad for a team like that, the City League team. They just don't have the people on this particular team to be able to compete. Because it was 50-0 at halftime, that caused the running clock to be put into effect the entire second half, and the game moved along very quickly. Austin Davis played well. Ben Smeesing played well. Austin Davis threw for 179 yards. Ben Smeesing rushed 9 times for 105 yards. So that was really a good way to start the year for the Piqua Indians. You don't like to have somebody too soft, but still you like to be able to say, we feel we're going to win this first football game to get us ready for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and another big stat that I saw that we can point out was, the total yards for that first game. Piqua with 319 total yards, Meadowdale with just 159, and 115 of those 159 came through the air. I mean, this Piqua rush defense played obviously very, very well.
And I think Meadowdale's 2 touchdowns came against the Piqua second and third group too. So, that was good. I was glad they were able to get in and play, but it's not the fact that Meadowdale drove the ball down our throats against our first team defense.
Well, one of the things that I noticed, AJ, was the fact that you go to Welcome Stadium, it probably seats 17,000, 18,000. We were the second part of a doubleheader. The first game, I think they probably had 500 people there. In the second game, I think, as I looked across the way, I don't think there were 100 people there from Meadowdale. There were 300 or 400 from Piqua. The excitement that you expect in an opening football game just wasn't there, and I think that took a little something away from the ball game. But I talked to Bill Neese. I said, Bill, I wasn't very excited. He said, you might not have been. I was on the Piqua sideline. I was very excited. Maybe he looked at things a little differently than I did.
And, you know, another thing, too, Piqua with a turnover that ended up leading into a touchdown for Meadowdale. Meadowdale had a few turnovers as well. I mean, just, you know, but the thing that also stood out to me was penalties. Piqua did not commit a lot of penalties. And, you know, that was, I think, one of the huge keys for Piqua in this game against Meadowdale.
Yeah, and that's a good way to get started. You develop the good habits early, you maintain those through the year.
Also, Meadowdale had 3 turnovers on the offensive side. I mean, that, again, is going to hurt any team. It's very hard to win any ball game with 3 turnovers.
Well, again, I think you have to understand that we had a couple kids with injuries. The Clark kid didn't play at all, and I think he's going to be ready to tonight against Trotwood Madison. But somebody says as a junior, he's a real candidate for Division I college football. He did not even dress. So we weren't at 100%. Had a couple kids bunged up, a couple with shoulder problems. But I think it's full steam ahead tonight.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, we are here live from Alexander Stadium at Perk Field on the Indian Nation Station, Piqua Channel 5. You know, this game here tonight between Piqua and Trotwood, which we'll get to here later in the broadcast, it's going to be a huge test, I feel like, for Piqua coming in 1-0. Trotwood running all over Troy last week, 48-0. You know, what are, you know, the things we're going to have to do better? What did you guys see last week from Meadowdale that that Piqua is going to have to do better?
Bob would be a better judge of that than I would. Bob can study the technicalities of the game. So, Bob, what was your perspective on if the Indians have a few things to work on or did have things to work on this week? What did you see?
Well, to be honest, I didn't see Meadowdale do a lot of good things. They threw the ball a little bit and had some success against the Piqua pass defense. And that's always been a point of contention with opposition, having them be able to throw the football successfully. And I think you're going to see some of that tonight. I think you're going to look at a Trotwood quarterback that very athletic, Markel Stevens Peppers. He can throw the ball well and he can run it. So Piqua's going to have a two-pronged situation there trying to defend him because he's an athlete and he can make plays. And their offense is basically centered around him. And again, he has some receivers that do a good job of catching the football. Dallas Daniels and William McDaniel, both of them can go up and get the ball. They both have good speed. Again, they're athletic. They can make big plays, and it's going to be a lot of pressure on the Piqua cornerbacks trying to cover those guys and keep the play in front of them and not allow the big play.
One of the things I talked to Bill Neese about this past week was special teams. And he said, you know, over the course of the last few years, special teams at Trotwood Madison left a lot to be desired. He says, I think they're a better special teams unit than they've been in a while. So there have been times, and Bob and I remember covering them at the high school level, where they didn't even have anybody who could punt. And so their special teams are playing very, very well. At least they did in the opening game. Bill Neese thinks that that is no longer a big weakness.
You know, something we haven't talked about yet, we talked about their passing game. That's just part of their offense. They have a running back that's outstanding, Ravion Hargrove. I think he's already verbaled to Bowling Green, and this guy can fly. He's got a lot of speed. He turns on the jets, and once he gets past the line of scrimmage, he's very hard to contain. So they can come at you with throwing the football. They can run the football. A lot of pressure on the Piqua defense.
And you guys know, you know, speaking of last week's games, you know, Trotwood beat Troy 48-0 pretty handily there at Trotwood Madison. But also Troy bounced back in a big way last night is what it looked like on the Thursday Night Live broadcast. It was broadcasted live on, I think, the Dayton CW, somewhere like that, as they beat Xenia 28-6. Guys, what are your thoughts on Troy bouncing back and putting on a good showing?
Well, what it tells me is that we got to be careful that we don't underestimate the Trojans, because they're extremely well coached. As you well know, they had a quarterback last year by the name of Kotwika. They're having trouble replacing him. I was telling Bob earlier, once they get their quarterback situation straightened up and find the one they need, I tend to think you got to be careful you don't take it for granted. I think by the time we get to week 10, we might see a different Troy team than we saw here in week 1 and 2.
I'll tell you, I watched part of the game last night. I admit I went back and forth between the Ohio State game and the Troy Xenia game, and I just was not impressed with Xenia. They have a running back that runs the ball well, but their quarterback was not effective, and as a result, Troy was able to shut down the running game better because they didn't have to worry about defending the pass. I thought Troy played pretty well in most parts. They moved the ball. They completed some passes. They had a running back. I did not catch his name. He was a backup. He was playing because their starting running back was injured, and this guy's a track guy. So he's got the jets too. So he broke a couple of nice long runs and put Troy ahead, and Troy was able to stay ahead the whole game.
All right, now earlier this week we had the Bill Neese's Coaches Show with Coach Bill Neese and Athletic Director Chip Hare. Here's what Coach had to say about last week's game and the play of his offense.
Well, we certainly saw our offense moving quite a bit on Friday night, and certainly we talked about not the same team. You said something in one of the preseason shows that stuck to me, and I think it makes sense, but kind of elaborate on that. You said you put a lot of pressure on Ben Schmeezing last year where he got a lot of touches, but maybe this year we want to kind of spread that out, take a little pressure off of him, so since it's the length of that season. Talk a little bit about that.
I think we've got some good weapons on offense that we haven't been able to put together in the past. Some years we've had a couple good receivers. Some years that we've had this. Last year we had a big tight end. I think coming into this year we've got 3-4 quality receivers that can catch the football, and we've got a quality quarterback that can deliver the ball to them. Number one. Two, I think we have 2 really good running backs in addition to Ben that can. It's not just, hey Ben, you got to do everything, then go back and play defense, then go be on the punt team and stuff like that. So I think it allows him to be able to relax and play the game full throttle. Because I know sometimes you always got to think when you're going 2 ways plus special teams, you got to have something in reserve. Now he can just go ahead and press the gas pedal and go as hard as he wants, knowing that there's other people that are also going to be able to contribute.
Coach, as we get into, you talked about one of our receivers who we will be talking to later in the show, Hayden Shrub. Having guys like this, and Kel Meckstroff was another one that had a nice game on Friday night. Having receivers that give you options really gives Austin some other things to look at as well. It keeps that defense second. It keeps them guessing.
It does. There were some games last year that maybe last year, 2 years ago, that people were just packing it in and able to bump our our receivers, and we weren't physically able to deal with it sometimes. The guys we have right now this year, they very much enjoy their blocking part of it. They're not just out there to catch footballs. They're really team orientated. So I think that's going to help quite a bit to be able to have that mixture all the way around.
So that was a good thought there from Coach Neese about Hayden Shrub. Chip Hare brought up a couple drop passes last week. He did have 2 catches for 50 yards. Both catches ended in touchdowns. So, Hayden Shrub, a big receiver for this Piqua team. Do you think dropping a big ball like that, hurts his psyche a little bit? Or do you think that he was happy and content with getting 2 touchdowns on 2 catches?
Well, good football players are never content when they make a mistake. You want to do well all the time. You don't want to make any mistakes. I don't think it destroyed him, but I think it certainly made him feel like, hey, I'm not going to allow that to happen again. I should have caught that ball, and by golly, I'm going to work on the next pass, and I'm going to be sure I catch it. You can't allow it to get you down.
Austin Davis was 10 for 16, Bob, but there were a couple balls that were right on the money that were not caught, that were catchable,
right.
And so Austin Davis's numbers could have been a little better, but like you say, you can't catch them all.
Your wide receivers can make you look good as a quarterback. They can make you look good, and they make you look bad. So, that's why the timing's important. The relationship you have with your wide receivers, you get out there and work one-on-one with them, get the timing down, and just get that pitch-catch relationship in place.
I think the Piqua passing game is going to be very, very crucial against this Trotwood Madison ball club. And if Austin Davis can have another great night and the receivers got those sticky hands, I think that could be perhaps the difference in the ball game, might be the passing game. Austin Davis throws a terrific football.
And I think Piqua will need that passing game to help defeat Trotwood tonight, because Trotwood does so many things well. From what I understand, talking to the coaches, defensively they're very quick. They move to the ball well. They pursue to the ball well. And they're not just a sit-back defense that's going to allow you to pound it and knock it down their throat. They're going to come after you. So the Indians are going to have to blend a passing and running game in the proper perspective to defeat this Trotwood team.
All right, guys. Again, we're week 2 here. The G-Walk, big games happening. Sydney takes on Bellefontaine on the road. Tip City's at Shawnee. Butler takes on Tecumseh. Greenville and Wilmington. That's always a good game when those two teams get together. I've witnessed a couple Greenville-Wilmington games. Again, Troy and Xenia, they played last night with Troy winning 28-6. Beaver Creek at Carroll, a game last year that was 0-0 heading into the fourth quarter, and the first points of the game weren't scored until there was about 6 minutes left to go in the entire regulation. So that's one thing to look out for. Centerville's at Lakota West. Wayne tries to bounce back against Olden Tangi Liberty, and Springfield takes on Princeton and Fairborn at Bellbrook. That's your G-Walk Week 2 schedule. Now, it's time for the game here tonight between the Rams and the Indians. It's Trotwood taking on Piqua. Last year's matchup wasn't what the Indians wanted, falling 38-6 on the road last season. It's a new year, and for the Indians, they're looking to prove the doubters that this team is the best team. Guys, tell me what you're feeling in this moment, the hype, the readiness for this Piqua Trotwood game tonight.
Let me begin because I'll be perfectly honest. Don't let those scores the first week mislead you. I think this is going to be a ball game, and if I had to guess, I would guess the team that makes the most mistakes is going to lose. That probably happens a lot, but I think such things as turnovers and interceptions, fumbles, things like that could be the difference here tonight.
Yeah, I think also for Piqua, ball control is going to be important because when Trotwood doesn't have the ball, they can't score. And Piqua has to work hard to maintain possession, so you can't have many 3 and outs. Trotwood has such a potent offense that they're capable of scoring anywhere on the field. And Piqua has to make them sustain long drives. They can't give up the big play. The punt return, the kickoff return, the 60 or 70-yard pass, or even the 50, 60, 70-yard run. They have to make Trotwood work their way down the field. And typically, I've heard coaches say, high school coaches say, in an 11-play drive, it takes 6-7 minutes off the clock. In 11 plays, probably a team's going to make some type of errant play or a miscue.
And if you're running an 11-play drive, you're hoping you're putting 6 points up on the board as well.
Yeah. But I'm talking about the defense trying to defend that. You want them to have 11 or 12 play drive because
exactly.
You don't want them to score quickly. You want to hope they make that mistake, or you can force the mistake.
And guys, I really think that it's all going to be about big plays tonight for Piqua. You got to make big plays. This Trotwood team's a very good team. They have to be able to score on those big plays, limit penalties, limit turnovers, and just go out there and have fun. That's the biggest key when it comes to a game like this.
You know what I always said, AJ?
What?
When you have your most fun? When you look up at the scoreboard and the game's over and you got more points than they do, that's when you have fun. You work your tail off for 4 quarters and you enjoy the victory. I think Piqua's going to have to put a lot of points on the board, though. I think Trotwood is going to score just because of the type of team they are, and I think Piqua's going to have to put some scores up there to defeat Trotwood.
And I think there's one name on the Piqua side we didn't say much of, and that's Ben Smeezing. He's an awfully fine athlete. He's an awfully good runner. He's a linebacker. Ben Smeezing is a player to be reckoned with, and his name will be repeated many, many times up in the booth between Bob and I.
Oh, and hopefully, he gets more than 9 carries. Only 9 carries last week, but he did have 109 yards. And, it was a blowout win for Piqua last week, but hopefully this week he gets his touches.
I think you'll see him play in the second half this week.
I'm sure.
He didn't last week.
I'm sure you'll see a lot of these first stringers play in the second half this week. Hopefully their conditioning is up and ready to go for 4 quarters.
Yeah, and the weather hasn't rained yet. The temperature is good for this
It's
early
a
in the
fall
season.
game.
Yeah. You don't have that 90-degree temperature. Guys are developing a lot of cramping and that kind of thing. So that should be a plus for both teams.
I agree with you guys. Well, guys, with that, we're going to sign off here tonight. We would like to thank you for watching the Indian Nation Station pregame show here on the Indian Nation Station. Stay tuned for the game coming up here on the Indian Nation Station with Bob Luby and Dwayne Bachman back in the booth calling play-by-play in color for your Piqua Indians here from Alexander Stadium. For Mr. Bachman, Mr. Luby, I'm AJ Ganger. Good night and enjoy the game, ladies and gentlemen.